From the moment the original creator awakened in the depths of the cosmos, reality began a slow descent toward madness. A God split by his own contradictions, a universe fragmented by instinct and will. This is the beginning of a resurrection plan that spans eons. Today, we dive deep into the rise, fall, and return of the primordial God Almighty, as we unravel his arrangements throughout Lord of the Mysteries. The original creator was the maker of the universe, and also its destroyer. He is both day and also night. He's the light of holiness, and also the decadent abyss. He is an amalgamation of all contradicting concepts and symbolism. That's why he naturally has a tendency to be dissociative in a way that cannot be controlled. Once he splits, there will be a strong trend towards convergence. In the Lost Era, the original creator awoke and naturally disintegrated, but before that, his mind and consciousness had already completely split, with different spirits controlling different Sephiroth, uniquenesses, and beyonder characteristics. These spirits are the personas of the original creator. Among them, the seer, apprentice, and marauder pathways belong to the celestial worthy, the spectator, sailor, reader, secret suppliant, and bard pathways belong to the primordial God Almighty. The celestial worthy is the embodiment of Sapphira Castle. The primordial God Almighty is the symbol of the Chaos Sea. They were also in a state of slumber, but they began to use the authority and beyonder characteristics they controlled to influence the world, making many preparations for the true dissociation when the original creator awakened. Since the original creator was both mad and rational, both self-destructive and wanting to survive, he created an invisible barrier to block the outer deities, while self-destructing, preventing them from chaotically plundering and initiating the convergence. And as the source of rationality and wisdom, he naturally wanted a stable existence. So he left an arrangement in the Red Priest and Demoness pathways, which symbolize his masculine and feminine sides. By balancing yin and yang and correcting the state, he could be separated and joined, both unified and contradictory, both whole and divided. This was the only way for the oldest one to stably exist. During this period, there was a myth. The God Almighty of Heaven created a divine child. Several angels, led by an archangel, rebelled. They were defeated, cast into the abyss, creating hell and turning them to devils. However, this myth may never have actually occurred. Instead, it represents a tendency, a connection between heaven and the abyss. Thus, when instinct drives convergence, that deity might prioritize such associations. This led to God Almighty's eventual accommodation of the tenebrous world, corresponding to the chained and abyss pathways. Here, the most powerful and active ones were God Almighty and the Lord of the Mysteries. The latter had another honorific name in the Western continent, known as the Celestial Worthy of Heaven and Earth for blessings. Because convergence is an instinct that becomes stronger at higher levels, it leads to an unavoidable conflict and antagonistic relationship between the two main personas. The Lord of the Mysteries and God Almighty of ancient times were unable to restrain themselves from converging together, becoming the embodiment of the entire universe, which is also the innate instinct of the original creator. In the early mid-stages of the First Epoch, they used different methods to grasp the additional Sephiroth. The Celestial Worthy accommodated both the River of Eternal Darkness and the Nation of Disorder, while the Primordial God Almighty accommodated both the City of Calamity and the Tenebrous World. This made their inclination to converge more intense, making it impossible for them to control themselves, and began taking actions against each other. The Primordial God Almighty was unaware of the setup and contingency plans left by the original creator to stabilize his existence when accommodating the City of Calamity. The reason this was the first Sephira to be accommodated was due to the mystical connection, an instinctive tendency that had long existed. Beyond his deep desire for it, he likely foresaw its dangers and intervened personally to prevent yin and yang from fully merging, halting their integration. The pillar of support is the highest level of stability one can achieve. If a Great Old One exceeds this limit, just accommodating an additional Sephira will lead to being controlled by the convergence instinct in an irreversible manner. During the early stages of the First Epoch, God Almighty fathered giant queen Omabella and Zetus with the brood hive. Both were later born in the mid-First Epoch. Omabella and Zetus are twin children of the brood hive, the former being the elder sister who inherited the power of the Earth pathway, and the latter being the brother on the neighboring Moon pathway. In the middle of the First Epoch, the Lord of the Mysteries and God Almighty had a battle that was abnormally intense but didn't cause much of a stir. During the battle, God Almighty ripped the error pathway's uniqueness from the celestial worthy. In the end, they nearly perished together. God Almighty's corpse created the first blasphemy slate. However, before the celestial worthy's fall, he sealed 7 Sephirat, the brood hive, nation of disorder, tenebrous world, city of calamity, river of eternal darkness, knowledge more, and key of light, in the western continent, to be guarded by Penglai. As a result, faced with the approaching apocalypse, all true gods who wanted to exceed the sequence limitations to deal with the outer deities' invasion had only 2 choices: to support the emergence of a Lord of Mysteries to lift the seal, or a God Almighty. But the former Lord of the Mysteries and God Almighty are very likely to awaken in their bodies. This meant that the threat from the outer deities would be reduced to its lowest level, and there wouldn't be any need for additional Great Old Ones to appear. Some of the celestial worthies' arrangements were for his own revival, while others were meant to interfere with the primordial God Almighty's revival, and vice versa. At the beginning of the Second Epoch, the ancient sun god woke up and walked out of the Chaos Sea with the grazed uniqueness of the error pathway, the first blasphemy slate and authority over the Chaos Sea. Not long after he walked out of Chaos Sea, he realized that the primordial one was awakening in his body, so he deliberately split a portion of his persona, fusing the authorities of degeneration with the hangman pathway's beyonder characteristic, creating another him known as Sasrir. Its purpose was to control the Chaos Sea and to isolate it from his true body to prevent any contamination and corruption. But in the end, the primordial one still awoke in his body. After creating Sasrir, he fought and defeated most of the ancient gods, becoming known as the omnipotent and omniscient God, the Lord that created everything, who was reclaiming his authority. During this period, Zetus was killed by Omabella with the help of her husband, the ancient god, giant King Ormir. They were worried about Zetus's resurrection, so they deliberately dismembered him into multiple pieces and sealed them in different places. Omabella might have also stolen his identity. Before his death, Zetus cursed his sister Omabella, cursing her to die by the hand of her direct descendant, and this curse came true. During this period, the ancient sun god defeated both giant King Ormir and giant Queen Omabella, who ruled over the City of Silver. After his rise, the City of Silver switched their belief to him. Although Ormir managed to escape, Omabella's death was orchestrated by the ancient sun god who used his authority over the error pathway to help sanguine ancestor Lilith steal her fate. However, as the successor to the primordial God Almighty, the ancient sun god had fragments of the primordial God Almighty's consciousness and spirit awakening within him at that time, though still suppressible. Under these circumstances, in Omabella's eyes, a god imbued with her father's consciousness and spirit used powers derived from him to kill her. Her death naturally triggered a curse on the City of Silver. Must die at the hands of a direct relative, or else become an evil spirit. Towards the end of the Second Epoch, the ancient sun god made another attempt to fight against the awakening will of the primordial one by giving birth to Adam and Ammon to reduce his beyonder characteristics. Despite his efforts, the primordial one was close to awakening in his body, so he established Ro's redemption to assassinate himself. Ultimately, they successfully killed him. According to his original plan, he would have been revived in the Giant King's court. He would then accommodate the corresponding uniquenesses and beyonder characteristics via the correct method, but Leodero, Aucuses, and Herabergen betrayed him and ate his body. He could only rush to fuse with his extreme emotions before dying, which led to his rebirth within the corpse. He then took away the beyonder characteristics of the hangman pathway and the authority of degeneration, becoming the true creator. After that, his consciousness returned to Adam, and he has been disguised as Adam ever since. The second blasphemy slate was created from his corpse. During the cataclysm, the Evernight goddess had suspicions that the primordial God Almighty's consciousness had revived in the eternal blazing sun. For a time, he would even occasionally lose control of himself. After an extensive period, he finally managed to suppress his alienated self and achieve a fragile balance, which allowed him to partially harness the power of the Chaos Sea. However, he had to tread carefully and limit the frequency of use. Otherwise, the corruption and alienation would deepen and the balance would collapse. For a long time, the northern continent was ruled by the Solomon Empire, led by the Black Emperor Solomon, who was Sequence 0 Black Emperor. Tudor and Trunsoist rebelled against the Black Emperor and the Solomon Empire, with the support of the 6 Orthodox gods. The Black Emperor perished, and they successfully established the Tudor-Trunsoist United Empire that ruled over the northern continent. Cheek's ascension ritual to Sequence 1 Apocalypse was due to her involvement in the first fall of Black Emperor Solomon. The Black Emperor managed to resurrect and rebuild the Solomon Empire. As a result, Trunsoist and Tudor, who were both Sequence 1 Prince of Abolition of the Black Emperor pathway, had to switch pathways, or they might instantly perish or drop to Sequence 2. Trunsoist successfully advanced to Sequence 0 Justiciar, with the help of the 6 Orthodox gods. After the resurrection of Solomon, Adam, influenced by God Almighty's godhood, supported and guided Alista Tudor to advance to Sequence 0 Red Priest, but he went mad in the process. The Tudor-Trunsoist Empire was divided into two, led by the 2 emperors. During this period, Cheek advanced to Sequence 0, completing the ritual which required her to descend into the depths of the earth, find the Chaos Sea, endure a degree of its corruption, while maintaining oneself neither falling nor transforming. Since the first blasphemy slate was formed from the corpse of the primordial God Almighty, it is theorized that he altered the corresponding knowledge to make the demoness advancement ritual involve contact with the Chaos Sea. This would facilitate his unique revival through the pathways of calamity and allow him to control and utilize the Chaos Sea effectively post-resurrection. As for the second blasphemy slate, it was created from the ancient sun, God's corpse, and could have been influenced by God Almighty. Due to these factors, she became corrupted by the primordial God Almighty, though his influence was manageable at this time. In the period of peace between Solomon's revival and the War of the 4 Emperors, Cheek and Tudor created the special mirror world with the help of Bethel Abraham and had 2 children, the twins Crismona and Judith. For true gods of the hunter and demoness pathways, it's normal for twins to be a boy and a girl. Anything else would be unusual. As elder sister and younger brother, they were a reflection of Omabella and Zetus in some way. Since the 2 pathways of calamity contained the arrangement for the resurrection of the primordial God Almighty, the union of Tudor and Cheek to conceive Crismona and Judith caused the consciousness of the primordial God Almighty to partially revive. The embryonic form of the special mirror world was constructed by Bethel to create a secret, spacious environment unknown to other gods for Tudor's and Cheek's meeting. Tudor didn't care whether this matter was seen, but cared about whether it would be known by those who shouldn't know. The combination of Tudor and Cheek was actually an arrangement left by the original God Almighty by arranging Adam through his godhood, which he prophesied would bring about a destined accident. Later, the special mirror world underwent strange changes which prevented Ammon, Bethel, and the others from entering. Afterward, Tudor became even crazier. Cheek began to claim herself as the true heir of the original creator, the first person born in chaos. During this period, she added the 4th and 5th honorific names, the female body of the primordial God Almighty, the original creator, the oldest one, in the mirror. This occurred because the primordial God Almighty had further awakened in them. In the First Epoch, the primordial God Almighty, who accommodated the City of Calamity, hid one part of his resurrection arrangement around the City of Calamity and the two pathways of Demoness and Red Priest. When the Chaos Demoness combines with the Red Priest, he will become the Trinity in the City of Calamity within the Chaos Demoness and the Red Priest, simultaneously resurrecting, ultimately forming a whole, returning in the mirror. But he perished too early, and his arrangements were not as expected. The City of Calamity was sealed in the Western continent by the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings, preventing him from quickly becoming the Trinity. In addition, there was also another change on the City of Calamity's side. His consciousness revived in the primordial Demoness and Alista Tutor, but without the City of Calamity's resonance and linkage, that consciousness grew very slowly and was suppressed and controlled by the two. Moreover, the place the primordial Demoness and Alista Tutor consummated was not the ordinary mirror world, but the special mirror world created by Bethel Abraham, who had accommodated the door uniqueness, and all three sequence one beyonder characteristics. The oldest one's body of both male and female, plus the power of the two direct pillars belonging to the oldest one, gave birth to the mirrored original creator. But his consciousness was very weak. Like all newborn infants, this gave the primordial Demoness and Alista Tutor a chance to merge with the mirrored original creator, with them each bearing the feminine and masculine side respectively, and then use this to control the City of Calamity. Their attempts gradually bore fruit. They could truly merge, but Adam and the other deities sensed something was wrong, and the War of the Four Emperors started, which caused their failure. Cheek wanted to kill Adam before they started trying, to prevent him from discovering their plan, but he ran faster than anyone and hid deeper than anyone. Unfortunately, their union was not yet complete, and they had many enemies. The deities used this chance to deal with them, while others attacked their enemies in the chaos. During this period, the mirror people were born in the special mirror world. The first type are those who are the descendants of the primordial Demoness. Their corresponding mirror people will be manifested at the moment of their birth, regardless of their location and whether they have ever been to Trier. People who often frequented underground Trier and come into contact with specific corruptions will also manifest their corresponding mirror people. If not for the seal specifically targeting the Fourth Epoch Trier, the corresponding mirror world will contain a complete reflection of Trier, including every resident. After the birth of the mirror people, Celestial Worthy made plans to make use of the mirror people in his future dream confrontation against Klein. However, the original God Almighty saw a certain scene while dying and disintegrating, and made corresponding arrangements spanning several eras to birth the magic mirror Erodes, who will be the key to Klein's triumph over the Celestial Worthy. As a result, the development exceeded everyone's expectations. A true, unknown great horror was born in the depths of the special mirror world, causing the Celestial Worthy's plan to defeat Mr. Fool by using the mirror person's splitting oneself to clinch victory, to suffer a complete failure. Initially, when the special mirror world first had anomalies, Adam already knew something was wrong. The occurrence of the War of the Four Emperors was also him pushing it from the shadows. Over 500 years after Alista Tutor's ascension to Red Priest, the War of the Four Emperors began. The Four Emperors, who were all Sequence Zero, fought against each other along with their subordinate angel families. The result was a disaster. The Black Emperor, Blood Emperor, and Night Emperor fell one after another. In the last moment, Tutor wanted to forcibly complete the merger, using this to pull all other Sephiroth from the Western continent, dragging the entire world to die. But Cheek disagreed because they had not yet become the mirrored original creator, so she decided to let him die for a while, and then resurrect him later. She dealt Tutor the critical blow, while Salinger completed his life's culling, sending his soul into the river of eternal darkness. However, the initial progress made still resulted in the birth of an Alista Tutor in white armor, with only a tiny bit of self-awareness The Blood Emperor met his end in the submerged Fourth Epoch Trier, which also caused the capital to sink underground. Rumor has it that he nearly entombed all the deities who participated in the war alongside him. Many angels also perished in underground Trier. Near the end of the Fourth Epoch, Salinger was influenced by someone and went mad from attempting to accommodate the uniqueness of the Red Priest with the help of the River of Eternal Darkness after over a century of digestion. Death, now stronger than even the true creator at his peak, went mad and sought to devour some of the seven gods. He wasn't able to resist the desire for converging the twilight and evernight pathways, and joined forces with the primordial demoness to wreak havoc and create a catastrophe on the northern continent. The primordial demoness wanted to manipulate him to collect Tudor's corpse in Fourth Epoch Trier, merge it with himself, and manipulate him to touch the special mirror world so Tudor could be resurrected, but then an accident occurred. When Salinger managed to accommodate the Red Priest uniqueness, the mirrored original creator underwent a mutation. It produced a certain self-awareness and ego. She was exactly like the primordial demoness, just in a black bone dress instead of a white one. To suppress her and to continue merging, the primordial demoness let the consciousness of the primordial God Almighty in her further revive, seeking a certain balance. Since then, she had had to suppress the primordial God Almighty's consciousness while fighting against the black version of herself, unable to effectively interfere with the outside world until recently. This problem caused both her and her direct descendants to intermittently experience separation and loss of personality, spirit, consciousness, and memory. In the middle of this period, the primordial demoness declared to death her intention to avenge the Blood Emperor, to make all seven gods of the northern continent perish, and to bring the Blood Emperor's deity corpse back to the surface from underground Trier. Several resurrection methods were prepared for Tudor, such as the remnant souls in the River of Eternal Darkness and the Beyonder characteristics in the Blue Avenger's treasury. However, the true resurrection was with Cheek. Cheek placed curses of destiny on Judith's offspring, leaving only his descendants. This forced Tudor to rely only on her. Although the seven orthodox gods were already fractured back then, they eventually joined forces in the end after being individually defeated, leading to the destruction of death early in the Fifth Epoch, the collapse of the Balaam Empire, and a power vacuum in the southern continent. His death also created the Berserk Sea that separated the northern and southern continent. The primordial demoness was also heavily injured, and she had only managed to descend to interrupt Klein's apotheosis ritual. Her greatest wish at that time was to immediately produce a Lord of the Mysteries and open the seal of the Western continent, allowing her to have a chance of finding the City of Calamity. As another plan for his resurrection, Celestial Worthy arranged for Sapphira Castle to release certain people in the cocoons when certain requirements were met. The person released would directly be accompanied with a curtain containing a set of sequence 9-to-1 Beyonder characteristics of the Fool pathway, and would instantly elevate them to the level of an angel, and thus would have a high chance of the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings awakening inside them. But something went wrong, and he wasn't able to resurrect as planned. After 2 consecutive failures, Sapphira Castle experienced a certain change. It was only until the late Fifth Epoch that the Sapphira Castle started to be able to fix the issue. This led to Joe Mingroi being released from Sapphira Castle into the body of Klein Moretti, although without the curtain. This was due to the Evernight goddess using the uniqueness in Antigonus to indirectly affect Sapphira Castle to tamper the Beyonder characteristic that accompanied Joe Mingroi's birth to the Forsaken Land of the Gods. After the birth of a transmigrator, they had to quickly make a connection with one of the 3 Lord of the Mysteries pathways. The original Klein was involved in the case brought about by the Antigonus family's notebook, which led to his death. However, this gave him an opportunity to choose the Seer potion. Klein received assistance from several deities, including the Evernight goddess and Lilith, and successfully advanced to half a Lord of the Mysteries through the Fool pathway. With the blessings of the Evernight goddess, He fell into a deep sleep within Sapphira Castle with a rose in his hand to fight the awakening will of the celestial worthy within him. During the Cordu incident, Adam sensed an opportunity to resist the apocalypse, so he arranged for the failure of Circle of Inevitability's boon ritual and successfully nurtured a Beyonder within the Calamity pathways. Adam wanted to nurture Lumian to accommodate the City of Calamity and become the origins of disaster, the calamity of destruction. During the ritual, the infant Zetus and Aurora's soul fragments were sealed within Lumian's body by the sleeping fool. This arrangement also involved the primordial God Almighty and the Great Mother who had Madame Poalis give birth to Omabella and Zetus in Cordu. Zetus died while Omabella was killed by the Padre, who was a believer of the eternal blazing sun. This was done to establish a mystical connection between ancient sun God's orchestration of the original Omabella's death for their future plans. Later, Adam arranged for Lumian to receive the residual aura of the Blood Emperor. He received Omabella's umbilical card, which gave him her bloodline, which caused Zetus's soul fragment to merge with him, making him equivalent to divine twins. He also received the seal of the underworld Taoist, which gave him a mystical similarity to the City of Calamity, and a fragment of the special mirror world. Later, he arranged a desperate situation which forced Lumian to switch from the Hunter pathway to Sequence 4, Demoness of Despair. They arranged for him to switch between the Demoness and Hunter pathways, spiraling upwards. This doesn't need to be symmetrical, depending on the situation, aiming to fulfill the phrase, pure yin does not last, pure yang does not grow. Yin contains yang, yang contains yin. The union of yin and yang gives rise to everything. They thought that this was the only correct way to approach the peak power of the two calamity pathways due to the ignorance surrounding the failure of Alista Tudor and Cheek's attempts, which created unknown variables. In this process, Aurora Lee's soul fragments will gradually revive when Lumian Lee is in the demoness state. If Lumian Lee can ultimately defeat Red Angel Medici and Primordial Demoness Cheek, mastering the peak power of the two calamity pathways, Aurora Lee's personality and soul fragments can rely on Lumian's own spirit and flesh to resurrect. Then, they can merge with his consciousness, suppressing the corruption of inevitability, and become his female form, controlling the feminine side of calamity. This is the true union of yin and yang, similar to the Medici evil spirit's current state but closer to the peak. This was also the only way to truly revive Aurora Lee. In Mr. Fool's dream, the boss of Aurora Company symbolizes the true creator, influenced by the Fool's cognition, mainly active near the headquarters of Intis Group. Peng Deng and Grisha symbolize Adam and the original God Almighty, but their specific positions are not fixed. They can swap at any time, symbolizing fusion and confrontation. Nizen symbolizes the Dark Angel, representing the part that split off from the ancient sun god. Adam's rib is his Eve. Zhang Yujia, who wanders outside the Dream City, symbolizes that the ancient sun god has already left this stage. Now his successors and the original God Almighty are confronting each other. God Almighty did not want Celestial Worthy to resurrect, so he specifically arranged for Franca to discover the corresponding psychological trauma in the underground area of Mushu Hospital, which allowed the Tarot Club to grasp important intelligence. Later, using his dream form, Peng Deng, he hinted that he was also the childhood friend of others, which led them to realize that Peng Deng is not only Zhou Mingrui's childhood friend, but that he's also the Celestial Worthy's childhood friend. God Almighty's dream form was formed from the bit of power left in the magic mirror and part of the spirit and consciousness that Grisha brought into the dream. God Almighty created a contingency by allowing Medici to enter the dream using his Dreamweaver abilities. If the Tarot Club did not get his hint, Medici would have replaced Lumian on the stage. Later, Lumian rented the magic mirror arose from the Star Provision Store as its creation was related to the original God Almighty, having its own hidden aspects. Moreover, it was the only sealed artifact Mr. Fool carried with him, likely to play an important role in weakening the Celestial Worthy and awakening Mr. Fool. Rhodes then confirmed that his birth and the Celestial Worthy's mirror people plan occurring at the same time, was not a coincidence, hinting to Lumian that the original God Almighty saw a certain scene while dying and disintegrating, and made corresponding arrangements which erupted through the medium of the magic mirror, weakening the celestial worthy to the greatest extent. The celestial worthy's backup plan involving Penglai for the arrangements left by the original God Almighty was interrupted by the celestial master and the underworld Taoist in the western continent, developing in ways he did not expect. Similarly, the mother goddess of depravity had other plans and didn't exert her power. She wished for the Fool to prevail because the Fool would begin a process of simultaneously opposing and integrating the celestial worthy, while also accommodating Sephira Castle. Such a process would be difficult to disrupt, even if the Fool wanted to give up and hand everything to the celestial worthy, or if the celestial worthy wanted to compromise and assist the Fool in controlling Sephira Castle. The resulting state wouldn't be easily broken or altered. It would take a long time. All these factors led to Klein's victory over the celestial worthy. After Klein achieved initial awakening against celestial worthy, problems dating back to Fourth Epoch Trier started to manifest. The earliest warning came from the outer deity, Circle of Inevitability, who warned Lumian against entering the special mirror world, or he risks losing control and going mad. Despite his caution, Lumian was plotted against by the Great Mother and God Almighty, and sent to the special mirror world where the primordial demoness Cheek was waiting for him. She wanted to give Lumian's body to Tutor and take advantage of the original creator's weak consciousness to suppress the primordial one's revival, but also use the chance to become the true creator. She would merge with Tutor and use the twin child of the mother goddess of depravity and the seal of the river of eternal darkness on Lumian to allow the mirrored original creator, the oldest one, to enter reality. She forcibly merged the Conqueror Beyonder characteristic with Lumian without supplementary ingredients or an advancement ritual, causing him to lose control and go mad. This plan was stopped by Jenna's sacrifice, which was arranged by Adam with Klein's assistance. That night, God Almighty had two resurrection opportunities. With the merging of Cheek and Tutor, God Almighty tried to use this opportunity to revive. However, his effort was thwarted by the celestial worthy's mask and Mr. Fool's fooling symbolism. The second revival opportunity had to do with the eternal blazing sun. He had spent over 2 millennia wrestling and contending with the godhood of God Almighty. He achieved a temporary victory and reached a balance. With the birth of Omabella, the eternal blazing sun as a symbol of the primordial God Almighty will be significantly strengthened because her true father is the primordial God Almighty, while her current father is the eternal blazing sun, within whom the consciousness of the primordial God Almighty has revived. This mystical connection between the two will blend together, disrupting the fragile balance. This plan was also prevented due to the Evernight goddess's caution. These developments led to the death of the eternal blazing sun, and the world barrier lost another support. Seeing these developments, Adam had no choice but to attempt merging with God Almighty within the Chaos Sea. Klein completed his confrontation and fusion with the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings, truly accommodating Sephira Castle. The acceleration of Klein's progress was due to the mother goddess of depravity's actions, her attempt to revive the primordial God Almighty through the mirrored original creator, and the subsequent true birth of Omabella. While these moves brought immense gains to the mother goddess, they also had significant drawbacks. They agitated the celestial worthy, who understood the terror of the original creator and the hatred the primordial God Almighty bore toward him. Forced to compromise, the celestial worthy chose to compromise and withdraw. Although this meant ceding the contest to Klein, the celestial worthy believed that, in the grand scheme of things, over tens of thousands or even millions of years, he would eventually triumph. However, should the original creator or primordial God Almighty return, all hope would be lost for him. During the final battle, the mother goddess of depravity brought new life to all consciousnesses. This included Grisha Adam, as well as Herabergen and Leodero, and also that of the primordial God Almighty. The primordial God Almighty's consciousness was already on the verge of taking over. Using his authority over the door pathway, Klein replicated the distortion powers of the Black Emperor and combined it with the error pathway's deceit symbolism to exploit a loophole in God Almighty's contract with the Great Mother to change the clause into a favorable situation for both sides. This postponed the climax of the apocalypse for several millennia, since there was no longer any way to stop the primordial God Almighty's consciousness from gaining dominance. Grisha Adam was killed by Lumian. Regarding the Chaos Sea, after this near resurrection, the primordial God Almighty's consciousness was significantly strengthened. Without hundreds or thousands of years to wear it down, none of those 5 paths are suitable for birthing a corresponding sequence 0, much like how in the Fourth Epoch, the kings of angels of the Fool, Door, and error pathways couldn't ascend.